Welcome back to my top 10 Shadowland videos. Bastion is the home to the Tyrion Covenant in the Shadowlands, a land of crystal skies with an Olympian vibe. Souls sent to Bastion by the Arbiter have lived lives of service and sacrifice to others, righteous in protecting liberty, freedom and justice, and healers of body and mind. We've already been told that Uther the Lightbringer will be found in Bastion, which comes as no surprise, as he fits the description of a noble soul to perfection. Now with this list, finding my top 10 was easy, but placing them was difficult, so there's very little between them all. So number 10, Kang, Fist of First Dawn, a Pandaren slave who lived in the time of the Mogu Emperor Lothar. The Emperor was a complete tyrant, who if his slaves displeased them, would separate slave families, even sending the cubs to the Serpent Shrine to fight the Mantid and die. Reading, writing and handling weapons were forbidden to slaves to prevent any uprisings, and those flouting the law were executed. Kang's son, Shaelun, was sent to the Spine to die, and Kang wore only black after that through his grief. He saw that without their slaves, the Mogu Empire was nothing. Over time, Kang taught himself how to fight, using his own body as a weapon. Developing the way of the monk, he taught other slaves, and the movement spread. When the Mogu began to realize, he left and ended up on Kunlai summit, and found the captive celestial Xuen, who passed along his knowledge. He created a staff, which he named Shaelun to honor his son, and it was blessed by Xuen. Passing it off as a walking stick, he began his revolution. As his rebellion spread and won victories, other slave races joined him, such as the Jinyu, Hosen and Grummels. At the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, Kang met Lothar in single combat, claiming both their lives, but also freedom for Pandaria. Number 9, Durotan, chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, mate of Draka, and son of Gaia and Garad. When his mother was injured on a hunting trip, he alone refused to leave her, protecting her from a pack of Garn. He flew into a bloodlust in the battle, mistaking Gaia's wolf Stormfang for a Garn. He wore her fur as a reminder of the cost of fury and loyalty. When Ner'zhul began proclaiming the Draenei as enemies, Durotan disagreed. He'd once been saved by Draenei, along with his friend Ogrim Doomhammer, when he was commanded to take Balan prisoner during a parley at Oshagun. He refused, finding it dishonorable. He allowed his clan's shaman to receive warlock training, but only to stop attention being drawn to his descent, and unwillingly aided in the attack on Telmor, feeling he was betraying the kindness that was shown to him. Having been warned by the now rebellious Ner'zhul of the truth of the Fel, he and his clan refused to drink and take part in the slaughter at Shattrath City. When the Dark Portal was established, he took his clan through, as the land of Draenor was dying due to Fel poisoning, and on arriving in Azeroth, the clan were banished by Gul'dan. They settled in Alterac Valley, and Draka gave birth to their son, Goel. Realizing his son and clan's future depended on their new world being protected from Gul'dan and the Fel, he arranged a meeting with Ogrim to pass on his knowledge of Gul'dan's plans. Ogrim came to the meeting in good faith, but his retinue was infiltrated by the Shadow Council. Durotan and Draka were assassinated, and Goel was left to die until he was found by Aedelus Blackmore and raised as the slave gladiator Thrall. Number 8, Tyr, a Titan Keeper empowered by Agramar with strength and courage. With Odin, he successfully imprisoned Ragnaros in the Firelands. He alone of the Keepers saw Galakrond as the threat he was, and while trying to puzzle out how to defeat him, came across an unusual group of protodrakes, Malygos, Alexstrasza, Neltharion, Nosdormu and Ysera. He enjoined them to aid him against Galakrond, as they too were worried for their kind. They succeeded in killing the beast, but not before Tyr had his hand bitten off. The hand was replaced with a silver one by Jotun, and he returned to defending his world. When Loken fell to Yogg-Saron's corruption, Tyr was one of the few who didn't fall prey to his schemes. He had the new dragonflights and their aspects aid him in subduing the winter-scorn Vrykul clan, who were working for Loken against the Earthen. Tyr and his friends Arcadus and Ironire stole the discs of Norganon from the halls of Ulduar, which contained the proof of Loken's treachery. Along with loyal Earthen, Mechanomes and Vrykul, they fled south. Loken sent 2 Cathraxi, Zakaj, Corruptor and Cathix, after Tyr and his people. When they were caught, Tyr ordered the rest of them to run, vowing to hold the Cathraxi at bay. In a battle lasting 6 days and nights, Tyr chose to sacrifice himself. Releasing all his power, he killed Zakaj and mortally wounded Cathix, but Tyr was dead. Many Vrykul chose to return to the spot and settle, naming the area Tyr's Fall and creating a tomb and shrine for Tyr and his hand. The place is now known as Tirisfal Glades. Number 7. Tyrion Fordring. Supreme Commander of the Argent Crusade and one of the first 5 paladins of the Knights of the Silver Hand. Knighted at 18 and a student of the Light under Archbishop Alonsus Fowl, he later became governor of Hearthglen with his wife Coranda and son Talon. When he tried to aid an Orcish hermit, Eitrig, who he felt sympathy for, he was branded a traitor and stripped of all titles and exiled. Years later, when the Scourge attacked Light's Hope Chapel, Tyrion came out of exile to aid the Argent Dawn and to rescue his son from the ranks of the Scarlet Crusade, but he was too late, and his son was killed by Icilion. Tyrion then reformed the Silver Hand to fight the Scourge and the Scarlet Crusade. When the Lich King ordered his Death Knights to attack Light's Hope Chapel, Tyrion appeared to reveal to the Death Knight leader, Darion Mograine, that they'd been sent to their deaths as bait. When the Lich King appeared and confirmed this, he attacked Tyrion. Darion Mograine threw him the corrupted Ashbringer sword. As the sword touched Tyrion's hand, his faith in the light caused the Ashbringer to be purified. The Lich King fled, fearing the weapon, and he's then instrumental in integrating the liberated Death Knights into the Horde and Alliance. In Northrend, he created the Argent Crusade to take down the Lich King. He hosts a tournament to find the strongest and bravest elite for a strike force into Icecrown Citadel. When confronting Arthas, Tyrion is frozen into a block of ice, and the Lich King kills his champions. As Arthas begins to raise them, Tyrion frees himself and shatters Frostmourne, releasing the souls it contained. With the resurrected heroes, he defeats the Lich King and places the Helm of Domination on the charred Bolvar Fordragon, as there must always be a Lich King, but not before being prepared to take the burden upon himself. He returns to Hearthglen until the Burning Legion arrive at the Broken Shore, and he takes his Argent Crusade to battle. Tyrion is captured by Gul'dan and is presumed dead. Held by the jailer Xerus, he's later rescued by other paladins, but he is mortally wounded. He chose his successor, passed on the Ashbringer, and died to be buried at Light's Hope Chapel. Number 6. Ronin, a skilled mage and leader of the Kirin Tor in Dalaran, married to the High Elf Risa Windrunner and father of Giramar and Galadin. During his early years, a miscast spell against orcs left his comrades dead and him on probation. He found redemption in aiding Crassus, the dragon Alexstrasza in mortal form. With Risa and Falstad Wildhammer, he frees Alexstrasza from the Dragonmaw clan at Grim Batol, destroys the Demon Soul, and battles Deathwing. Before the birth of his twins, he was contacted by Crassus for aid in investigating a time rift, which sucked the two and the nearby orc Broxigar 10,000 years back to the War of the Ancients. They tried to help without damaging the timeline, and Ronin ended up commanding the Moon Guard after Illidan's defection during the resistance against Dajara and the Burning Legion. When they returned to the future, he arrived just in time for the birth thanks to Nosdormu. When his wife's cousin, Zendarin Windrunner, attempted to kidnap his sons, he again found himself at Grim Batol, facing the larger threat of Cintharia, consort of Deathwing, trying to create the Twilight Dragonflight. With the aid of Iridi, a Draenei priestess, and a Netherwing dragon, Zoraku, he battled Cintharia and the Twilight Dragon, Darganax. With Zendarin dead, the couple returned to Dalaran, and under Ronin's guidance, brought the Kirin Tor back to greatness until Malygos declared war on mortal mages. Ronin had Dalaran opened up to the Horde and moved it to Northrend to combat the Blue Dragonflight and the Lich King. When Bran Bronzebeard brought news about Yogg-Saron's prison weakening in Ulduar, Ronin tried to mediate cooperation between the Horde and Alliance, but the meeting was a disaster, so he turned to adventurers for aid. When Garrosh Hellscream became war chief, he declared war on the Alliance. Ronin was present at Theramore when a mana bomb, powered by the focusing iris, was detonated on the city by Garrosh. His final act was to use his power to mitigate the damage and to portal Jaina Proudmoore to safety, believing her the future of the Kirin Tor. Number 5. The alternate Balan. The sole Eredar leader to reject Sargeras' offer of power and knowledge, he led his people from his world Argus 25,000 years ago, aided by the Naru. Each time the Burning Legion found the exiled ones, or Draenei, he would take them away in the Genadar, until the Naru Ka'ara had to be ejected, having been drained to the point of entering a void state, and the ship crashed on a planet they later named Draenor. Draenor was already inhabited by the shamanistic orcs, but they coexisted for years until Kil'jaeden found them again. The demon manipulated the orcs through Ner'zhul and Gul'dan to attack the Draenei, claiming they were a threat to orcish life. Just as Gul'dan was offering fell blood of the Pit Lord Manaroth to the orcs, it was rejected, and Manaroth killed by Grommash Hellscream. The orcs knew the truth, thanks to Garrosh, who had arrived from the future, and they formed the Iron Horde, free of Fel, to conquer Draenor and Azeroth. When Khadgar and adventurers arrived from Azeroth, they allied with Velen and the Draenei during an assault on Karabor by the Shadowmoon clan and Ner'zhul. The orc attempted to release the power of Ka'ara, the Dark Star. After passing his light's blessing to his student Yrel, Velen sacrificed himself, using his light to cleanse the Naru of the Void, and Karabor was saved. Number 4. Corialstraz. Prime consort of the life aspect Alexstrasza, whose mortal form was the high elf mage Crassus, and became a senior leader in the Kirin Tor. When his queen was captured by the Dragamore orcs in Grim Batol, and used to breed mounts and controlled and tortured by the demon soul, Crassus sought to rescue her. He ordered Ronin to free her, and while he sought out the other aspects to aid him against Deathwing, who was also involved. He was injured trying to spy on Neltharion, losing 2 fingers, and at Grim Batol was temporarily caught by Necros Skullcrusher. The aspect healed him, and together they battled Deathwing, while Ronin destroyed the demon soul, freeing Alexstrasza and their children. He called on Ronin again to investigate a time rift, when Nosdormu pled for aid. Along with Broxigar, they wound up in the War of the Ancients. Because his past self was already present, he wasn't able to shapeshift, and was very weak until the two were brought together. He battled Hakar the Houndmaster, Manaroth and Archimonde, and Deathwing with his black dragonflight. With the war won and the Well of Eternity destroyed, Nosdormu sent him and Ronin home. When Kel'Thas Sunstrider destroyed the Tainted Sunwell, Corialstraz felt the accumulated energy left and forged it into a human woman shape called Anvina Teague, with no knowledge of her true identity. Years later, he posed as a mage, Borel, and told Anvina and her companion Kalecgos her true identity. When Darkan Drafia started to drain her, he took control of Corialstraz, forcing him to battle Tyrigosa until the spell was broken. Years later, he was involved in preventing Cintharia from creating the Twilight Dragons at Grim Batol. After the Cataclysm, he discovered the Twilight Hammer cult in the Ruby Sanctum, casted spells on his newest clutch. They had mutated into chromatic dragons, and touching the eggs infected him too. In his last desperate act of sacrifice, he chose to destroy all the infected to prevent its spread, and all the other sanctums were already tainted. Using all his life energy, he imploded portals throughout the sanctums, killing himself and the eggs. Tragically, his queen and the other flights believed that he'd betrayed them, unknowing of the cult and the corruption. The truth was finally revealed by Thrall through a vision, and his repeated acts of heroism and sacrifice maybe place him in Bastion rather than Ardenweald. Number 3. Alexandros Mograine, High Lord of the Silver Hand, husband of Eleanor and father of Reno and Darion. During the Second War, he found a dark orb on the body of an orc warlock, and during the Third War, he discovered that the orb would absorb light. Together with other Silver Hand members, they filled the orb with as much light as they could, until it became a holy object, healing burns that he had on his hand. He had the sword Ashbringer, made by Magni Bronzebeard, with the orb attached, which would turn Scourge into ash. He was formidable, and Kel'Thuzad recognized the threat. With Balnazzar posing as Seydan Dathrahan of the Scarlet Crusade, they had his son Renaud lure him to Strathhome, where he was ambushed. He destroyed the Scourge, and when he flagged with fatigue, Renaud stabbed him in the heart with the Ashbringer, corrupting the blade, and Kel'Thuzad raised Alexandros as a Death Knight. Now leader of the 4 horsemen in Naxxramas and wielding the corrupted Ashbringer, he was under the Lich King's control, until Darion arrived with a band of paladins, killing Alexandros, but his soul was still trapped in the blade, which Darion took with him. When Darion went to see Renaud at the Scarlet Monastery, Alexandros' spirit appeared from the blade, accusing his son of his murder, and then beheading him. When Light Hope Chapel was attacked by Kel'Thuzad and the Scourge, Darion realized only an act of love could release his father's soul, and he plunged the Ashbringer into his own heart, freeing Alexandros, but condemning himself to an undeath life as a Death Knight. When Darion returned to Light Hope Chapel, this time at the head of a Death Knight army, Alexandros' spirit appeared to help his son remember his old life. But when the Lich King arrived, he trapped Alexandros' spirit within Frostmourne. Alexandros' soul was later released when Tyrion Fordring and a group of heroes killed Arthas and shattered Frostmourne. Number 2. Anduin Lothar, the Lion of Stormwind and last descendant of the Urathi bloodline. He was the Knight Champion of King Lane Rin. He grew up in Stormwind with Prince Lane and Medivh, sharing trouble and adventures. When skirmishes began with the Gurabashi trolls of Stranglethorn Vale, the trio defied King Barathan and journeyed to the jungle and battled the trolls. Medivh's magic shielded them from harm, and they triumphed against the warlord, Joknon, and returned home. However, this provoked a full invasion of Stormwind's lands by the Gurabashi, and a siege of the city itself by Joknon's son, Xanon. The battle would claim King Barathan's life, and Stormwind almost fell until Medivh unleashed his full power, destroying the trolls and Xanon included. Years later, he discovered the presence of orcs in the Black Morass, following reports of attacks. The orcs began to invade and control more human lands. He prevented the orcs from taking Stormwind for years. He met with Medivh's apprentice, Khadgar, and voiced his concern over the Guardian, and later the apprentice arrived in Stormwind to reveal Medivh's betrayal. Anduin gave Stormwind's defence to Gavinrad, and led a force including Khadgar and Garona Half-Orcan to Karazhan to confront Medivh. During the confrontation, Anduin beheaded Medivh, but not before Khadgar's vitality was drained, leaving the youth appearing as an old man. When he returned home, he found the kingdom in ruins. Lane was assassinated by Garona, and Anduin declared defeat after 4 years of war, taking the young Prince Varian and the survivors by ship to Lordaeron. With King Terenas Menethal's aid, the human kingdoms created the Alliance of Lordaeron, and Anduin was named Supreme Commander, and was also aided by the High Elves and Dwarves. He approved the creation of the Paladins, and with his second-in-command, Turalion, he led the armies to rout the orcs and reclaim his homeland. Eventually the Horde were pinned at Blackrock Spire, and in one of the greatest battles, Anduin became separated from his force. And a duel against the new war chief Orgrim Doomhammer, he lost his life, with his skull crushed by the legendary hammer. His death fueled the Alliance to fight even harder and eventually claim victory. Before I get to my number 1, I have some honourable mentions. Sir Zeliat, a paladin whose faith in the light was so strong that even when he died and was raised as a Death Knight, he could still call upon the light. He was made one of the 4 horsemen within Naxxramas, and was famous for asking forgiveness from the light and his victim before smiting them. His end came when heroes stormed Naxxramas in the skies above Northrend. Jarek Bloodfire, a shaman orc who, even when the elements abandoned them, refused the warlock training and the Fellblood. He begged his brother Cigar not to drink, but he embraced the Fell gladly. Jarek never wanted to take part in the raids on the Draenei, and repeatedly actually tried to help them escape, but Cigar kept thwarting him. He drew the line when his brother went to kill a Draenei child, Lena, after murdering her parents. He blinded Cigar in one eye and fled with the child. He ended up in Zangarmarsh with his warg, Vangar, and Lena, raising her himself, and taught her the traditional orc ways of hunting, and moved around often, hunted by Cigar. On Lena's birthday, he gave her a cub, Pebbles, to ease her grief over Vangar's death. When she took the cub hunting, she was found by Cigar and held hostage. To prevent Lena's death, Jarek was forced to drink Fellblood. He was given a dagger and told to kill the child, but he used his new power to his advantage and protected her. He and Cigar killed each other, and as he died, the elements returned to him and gave him a vision of his adopted daughter, Groan, living as a shaman, working with Draenei and orcs to restore balance. Number 1, Cigar, son of Korok, brother of Varrock Sourfang, a veteran of the First and Second War within the Horde, and a hero of the war against the Burning Legion on Kalimdor. He was the sole survivor of a group sent to hold a vital mountain pass against the demons. He suffered greatly with survivor's guilt and never felt worthy of his honours. He was sent to investigate a time rift felt by the shamans. The portal killed his companion, but sent Cigar 10,000 years back in time to the War of the Ancients, along with Ronin and Alexstrasza, who were also investigating. He was captured by the Moonguard and taken to Suramar in a cage. He was injured and treated as a savage animal, except by Tyrion's Whisperwind, who was kind and healed him, and eventually freed him. He met up with Ronin and the Red Dragon, who'd also found Tyrionda. He became Malfurion Stormrage's guard while he journeyed in the Emerald Dream to destroy the spells at the Well of Eternity. His fighting prowess earned him respect from the xenophobic Kaldorei, and Cenarius gave him a mystical axe known as the Axe of Cenarius. During the final battle at the well, he realized more time was needed for his friend's plan to work, and the whole world and future was at risk. He jumped into the portal from the back of his Red Dragon mount, and with the axe held high, entered the portal and cleared it until he was stood on a mountain of demon bodies. Eventually, this caught the attention of Sargeras himself. He attacked the Titan and actually managed to wound him with the axe of Cenarius before his inevitable yet legendary death. The distraction allowed the spells to work and close the portal and banish the Burning Legion. His legacy is that of the only known mortal to ever injure Sargeras and to die defending an entire world with his selfless sacrifice. Alexstrasza made sure it was known by disguising himself as an orc shaman and taking the story and the axe to Thrall, and even the Night Elves have a statue of him, the only orc beloved by the Kaldorei.
This one shows promise. The whispers lure her toward her fate.